team, shawty off a bean and I wanna get me some. You know I got beat up, broke a rib, went home and had me a threesome. Pocket stink, that's
Hello. Oh, jeez. Okay, finally. Let's go. There we go. Welcome back. Jesus. Oh, God. It's been a while, okay, guys? It's been a while. Oh, God. It's time for the emergency stream, okay? Finally, so I can be topical. I didn't think when I made my first video about Harry and Meghan that I was going to go down this fucking rabbit hole, but here we are. Oh, man. Hello, everybody. Hello. I have been in a deep royal family rabbit hole for weeks at this point. We have to catch up. Because I'm already late to the party to watch Harry and Meghan, so we gotta go into it right away. Oh boy. If you are not as up to speed on royal family stuff, then allow me to educate you. Because I've been deep in this for a while right now. And we have a lot of ground to cover. So, let's go, everyone. All right. So, if you haven't been following, okay, in royal family news, all right, this isn't just like, you know, drama, tea, whatever. This is, I swear to God, I'm not making this up. This is like the beginning of the end of monarchy in the United Kingdom. That's my hot take. I didn't think that it was going to come to this when I watched this tiny little Harry and Meghan documentary. But if you don't know, where do I start? Okay. So if you don't know, Harry and Meghan got chased out of the United Kingdom because they wanted to, I don't know, do their own thing. They got chased out. They decided to make a documentary about it that got released like right before Christmas. Became the biggest documentary debut on Netflix. Again, I went into it just watching it thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting. This will be something. Did not realize that it was going to become something wild. And I didn't know all of the stuff leading into this. Like, I knew they had done like this, you know, Oprah interview and whatever. Did not realize that this was one small part of a much, much larger story about how Harry and Meghan have been treated by the British media, which is essentially that the British media has been in cahoots with the royal family to like tear them down, just absolutely destroy them. And I don't think I was like prepared for that. After I watched the documentary, I was obviously very like sympathetic and wanted to like just like unpack all the things that they discussed in the documentary. And it just seemed impossible, like with the space online. There was just so many bots hanging around, so many hate accounts, so many hate channels, which is what caused me to create my first video about the topic, which was originally supposed to be one tiny little video where I was going to say my 3 stories, do my piece, and then walk out of this like royal sphere. But of course, I was not prepared for what was coming next, which was Prince Harry is releasing a memoir called Spare, which is currently what he's promoting on his sort of like press tour, is this memoir that is meant to sort of be an open, honest portrayal of all the sort of horrible shit that he had inflicted on him as a member of the royal family growing up. And even though that this memoir is not meant to come out until next Tuesday, parts of this documentary have already been leaked. A lot of sort of juicy details have already come out. The first news organization that was that got a copy of the book, got their hands on a copy, was The Guardian, who their first reporting of what was in the book was that in it, Prince Harry details a physical attack from Prince William, which I was not expecting at all when I made my first video, which, if you don't know, is kind of a sympathetic portrayal of Prince William and his relationship to St. Andrews. And I was obviously not thinking about that when I created my first video, but obviously that has gotten a little bit of traction in the algorithm because it is related to Prince William. But in hindsight now, it's a little bit odd to me because I don't know if I would have presented him as positively as I did in my first video if I had known this at the time when this came out. And this is just the sort of most explosive part that has come out about the documentary, or sorry, not about the documentary, about the memoir so far. There has, since then, more and more people, more and more press junkets have gotten copies of the book. It got released early in Spain and people got it translated and all this stuff. So not only have we learned stuff about this physical altercation, but there have also been discussions about the book containing more information about Kate and Meghan falling out and why they had this sort of this contentious relationship the media like kept bringing up for drama. He talks about his choice to wear a Nazi outfit and how Prince William and Kate Middleton supposedly like encouraged that of him and then kind of threw him to the wolves, so to speak, after he got in trouble with the press and they never really sort of came to his defense. He talks about being a soldier. He talks about specifically the Taliban fighters that he has killed and kind of discusses his sort of trauma related to being a soldier. He talks about losing his virginity. He talks about his sort of drug and alcohol misuse. And this is just the little bits and pieces that have been swimming around in the media over and over. And so far, it's been a absolute mess. Now, I know. I see messages from my fiance saying, "Are you watching the interview?" Yes, we're gonna watch the interview. All right. I have it up here on ITV, but for some reason I can't start it from the beginning. I was hoping that I could just like go back and start it from the beginning, but I can't. So I was just giving a brief recap before we jump into the interview. But the point is, so already this memoir has gotten more and more salaciousness out of it. And this is before Harry has done any interviews for it. So there is 5 interviews that he's doing on his press junket. And currently, right now, is the first of these 5, which is on ITV right now. We're going to jump into it, but we're going to jump into it like in the middle of it because for some reason I can't get it started from the beginning. So hopefully at some point I can go back and talk about what's already been said. But the first interview is right now on ITV. Then tonight is 60 Minutes interview with Anderson Cooper, which we are also going to watch live. I can't watch any of the ones on Monday and Tuesday live, but I'll hopefully try to get a recap of that going. And I would also like to, when I receive my copy of Spare, I would like to do potentially a live stream discussion of my thoughts about the book, and try to make content that I don't have to heavily edit, because I'm currently working on my second video about the themes of Harry and Meghan from the documentary that I promised at the end of my first video. And that's taking forever. And I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to cover everything if I sit on it. So we are jumping into it. Okay. I got the ITV up. We're going into it right away, jumping in. I've missed the first part, so. But it's time, we gotta know.
Had been doing cocaine around this time, Harry admits in the book. In a country house, he says, adding that it did not make him in the slightest bit happy. Feeling different, he writes, was the goal. He was a deeply unhappy 17-year-old boy willing to try almost anything to alter the status quo.
I think it's an example of the scale of honesty. You don't seem to hold anything back. You tell the story about cocaine through this tabloid editor. You said, came to you and said, I've got a picture of you taking cocaine.
He didn't come to me, he came to someone else.
Yeah, okay, but we're going to release it unless you give us a tell-all interview, whatever it was they wanted. And you say, I called their bluff, and you're quite pleased. But I just want to be clear, are you really saying that third in line to the throne, or whatever you were, you taking a Class A drug is not a matter of public interest? Because I think that's a question people will have. Do you accept that is a matter of public interest for the press?
I think what's a matter of public interest is the relationship between the institution with the tabloid media. That, to me, is more public interest than anything else.
Okay.
I agree with that, 100%.
My life in itself has been put through, a blender as such. So I think the lines have been blurred so much that public interest is more about the well-being of society, yet what interests the public, which is what the media have now turned it into, to the point of where they actually genuinely believe that. So I would be concerned with
I
that.
wanted to sort of pick up in your childhood, because one of the things that came across very clearly to me is your deep love for your dad and your dad's deep love for you. I mean, he calls you my darling boy. You reference it pretty frequently. I loved him. I needed him. You know, you talk about being buoyed by his praise, right? Now, maybe this isn't surprising to people. Why should the fact you loved your dad be surprising? But it's very, very clear.
Of course, he's my father. I will always love him.
Well, not everyone loves their dad.
And I think that this is actually a really good point. I don't know if I can watch it.
I mean, some people do, some people don't, but it's just
very
very clear.
anything.
I'm just pointing out that it's a very clear message you seem to want to get across at that.
But the point, but I agree with his point here that even though his father has been abusive to him, I definitely understand how he has gone into this, having mixed feelings about his dad at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, there's still love there, right?
About how much you do love him.
Exactly. I love my father. I love my brother. I love my family. I always do. Nothing of what I've done in this book or otherwise has ever been any intention to harm them or hurt them. The truth is something that I need to rely on. And after many, many years of lies being told about me and my family, there comes a point where, again, going back to the relationship between certain members of the family and the tabloid press, those certain members have decided to get into bed with the devil, right?
And those certain members would be definitely William and Kate, which is also, I think I portrayed them very sympathetically in my first video, and I wanted to do that intentionally because I do think that they definitely went through this trauma through the way that they had to handle the media when they were first dating and when they were first courting each other. And so I definitely acknowledge that trauma that they went through when they were starting out at the beginning of their relationship. However, now knowing this part of the story from Harry's perspective, I kind of wish that I had been a little bit more critical of that, because they're now perpetuating that trauma and using the media against other members of their family, which is just no bueno, no good. Oh, come on. ITV, come on. No. Ugh, see, this is why I don't want to pause this stupid thing. Come on. I need to know. Oh my God, I broke it. I broke the stream already. Come on. Oh boy, come on. I always keep reading this as Tom Brady instead of Tom Bradbury. Come on. There's probably like way too many people tuning in.
Period. Yeah. And everyone doubles down. My wife shares her experience. And instead of backing off, both the institution and the tabloid media in the UK both double down.
I want to sort of just briefly talk about your stepmother in the press, because you are pretty consistently scathing and suggest that you are...
Scathing?
Well...
We should be scathing to Camilla,
well, as in you say that your interests were sacrificed on her PR altar, to quote. And you seem to be specifically referencing that. Now, her people might say, well, it's not a crime to go to lunch with journalists.
I think in the book it's very clear what happened.
We support you, we said. We endorse Camilla, we said. Just please don't marry her. Just be together, Paul. He didn't answer. But she answered, straight away.
Oh, this is a new
Shortly
part.
after our private summit with her, she began to play the long game. A campaign aimed at marriage and eventually the crown. With Paul's blessing, we presumed. Stories began to appear everywhere, in all the papers, about her private conversation with Willie. Stories that contained pinpoint accurate details, none of which had come from Willie, of course.
Oh!
They could only have been leaked by the one other person present.
There's no part of any of the things that I've said
I was not expecting that.
Scathing towards any member of my family, especially not my stepmother. There are things that have happened that have been incredibly hurtful. Some in the past, some current. No institution is immune to accountability or taking responsibility. So you can't be immune to criticisms either. And you talk about, scrutiny. And, my wife and I were scrutinized more than probably anybody else. I see a lack of scrutiny to my family towards a lot of the things that have happened in the last year.
You say that you
think.
and your brother didn't want her to...
They haven't committed any crimes.
But you say on their wedding day you were really happy for them. I mean, is that really true that you were?
100%. William and I wanted our father to be happy, and he seemed to be very, very happy with her. We asked him not to get married. He chose to. And that's his decision.
Oh no, I broke the stream. Well, that was a big revelation as well. I mean, so that had been coming out as well in some of the press before these interviews, that he was hesitant about Camilla joining the family. And I can 100% understand where he would be coming from with that, especially with
the moment
PR
I don't recognize them as much as they probably don't recognize me. But that is a symptom of one of the problems, where we're not just talking about family relationships. We're talking about an antagonist, which is the British press, specifically the tabloids, who want to create as much conflict as possible. The saddest part of that is certain members of my family and the people that work for them are complicit in that conflict. So though I would like to have reconciliation, I would like accountability, I've managed to make...
Jesus Christ. There's like way too many people watching this right now, I think. Breaking my stream. I totally agree with what he's saying about accountability, right? That the royal family, instead of taking this as an opportunity to grow and to change how they relate to the press, have decided to keep on keeping on doing crazy PR stunts. And what's really confusing to me is that in the modern era, one way to like really keep the press off your back as a celebrity is to control your own access, right? Like, most celebrities now aren't being hounded by the paparazzi every day because they have their own Twitter and their own IG account, and they can share and post these sort of private moments that are curated by them, like with their consent, which kind of drives down the need for this like super gossipy, tabloidy, paparazzi type of journalism, because they can just share specific things that they want to share instead of being like having this like crazy symbiotic relationship with the press, where you're like, well, I want to be on their good side, but I also don't want to be like chased down and killed. And they don't seem to be wanting to step into that like new era of celebrity, which is very telling, because I think the reason why they don't want to transition to that new type of celebrity is because someone like a Prince Charles and or a Prince William has so much control over how the system works currently, and they're like unwilling to give up that control. Because I think I don't know if this has already been discussed, but a lot of the things that Harry alleges is that a lot of this sort of negativity that's driven by the media and the press through the royal family is due to jealousy, right? It's about the people, the kings, right? The current king and the future king wanting to have that sort of grip on the public interest. But the problem is, you can only do that to a certain extent, right? You can't force people to like you. However, in the modern era with the internet, you can certainly force people to hate another person. And this story has been like so fascinating to me because this is really about like the royal family is like unwilling to put the kibosh on hate, right? Hate accounts, hate channels, people misconstruing, misrepresenting everything that they say and do, because they just want to be in control all the time. They want to be in control of the narrative. But it's not what we come to expect from our modern day culture. I mean, if they're basically acting as celebrities, which I think they're a lot more than celebrities, because this is politics, right? This is the monarchy. The monarchy is part of your political system, right? This isn't just like gossip, right? If they want to politically continue to have power, then I just don't think that this is a good look. I don't think this is a good look, is all I'm going to say. I just want this interview back. Like, I really recommend, while we're waiting for ITV to come back, Anne Boleyn, royal expert on Twitter, hilarious takes. And one of the best ones I've read so far. Hang on. Right. Is that currently at like right now, the problem they are having right now is that they are still claiming that they are maintaining this dignified silence, right? Never complain, never explain, right? And yet they are allowing insiders, aides, sources from the institution to put all this shit out into the media. So let's even claim that like Buckingham Palace or whatever is never complaining, never explaining. Wouldn't this be concerning to you on an institutional level? Like, you have like a huge leak problem, right? You have a huge problem of people leaking hate and nonsense and changing the narrative and misconstruing the narrative on your behalf. So if you really wanted to be in the right, you should be doing the right thing. Like, you should be stopping this kind of behavior within your institution. But they don't want it to stop. That's the thing. It's intentional. And that's what makes it so nefarious. It's manipulative. They're manipulating the media
I've
narrative.
always loved my brother. And I think what would be quite shocking or surprising to people is that after our mother died, we were on different paths, right? Two individuals who experienced a very similar traumatic experience, but dealt with it in two very different ways.
You have this sibling rivalry with your brother, and you say that, you know, he didn't want you on his turf. At one point, there's an argument, right, about Africa and charity work, and you say he said, "Oh, Africa's my thing. You can't have it." I mean,
how dare you both work in Africa?
You get through to, and Kate comes along, but you say you really did, you do love her, and you saw her as the sister you never had. And then you get to this point where you meet the love of your life. And you introduce them, and
they're Suits fans. Who would have thought?
This part was the best of the leaks.
But
Their
the impression
jaws
is that
dropped
they just, there's
in the leaks
almost from the get-go, it's just they don't get on. Fair?
Yeah, fair. And
why? I mean, what do you think that was all about?
Lots of different reasons. But as I again detail a lot, I had put a lot of hope in the idea that, you know, it'd be William and Kate and me and whoever. I thought that the four of us would, you know, bring me and William closer together. We could go out and do work together, which I did a lot as the third wheel to them, which was fun at times, but also I guess slightly awkward at times as well. But yeah, I don't think they were ever expecting me to get into a relationship with someone like Meghan, who had, you know, a very successful career. There was a lot of stereotyping that was happening that I was guilty of as well at the beginning.
I'm glad you admitted
American actress, right? And that was playing out in the British press, in the media at the time as well. So, you know, the fact that I had that in the back of my mind, and some of the things that my brother and sister-in-law, some of the way that they were acting or behaving, definitely felt to me as though, unfortunately, that stereotyping was causing a bit of a barrier to them really sort of, you know, introducing or welcoming her in.
What do you mean
That's a way of saying they
American
racist.
actress, divorced, biracial. There's all different parts to that and what that can mean. But
if you are, like
a lot of my family do, if you are reading the press,
does not surprise
the British
me.
tabloids, at the same time as living the life, then there is a tendency where you can actually end up living in the tabloid bubble rather than the actual reality.
Well, let's talk about one of those, the wretched bridesmaid story. You know, story was
this
your
story
wife
is
had
so
made Kate
boring
cry.
to
There's been over 25 versions of that story now.
Who cares?
So your version of it in this book is it was the other way around.
I care in that Kate should
Meghan
make
was
her
the one
cry,
left in
but
tears. Kate came around the next day with flowers.
It's more so like, I just don't care in that, like, of all the things, like, your monarchy is about to collapse. Like, who gives a fuck about the bridesmaids' dresses? Like, this is about, you have an institution that's perpetuating abuse. Like, yes, bridesmaids' dresses, meh, but...
They were more than happy to put out statements for less volatile things.
Less volatile thing. Yeah, that's the thing is, like, notice what do they actually comment on? What do they actually put statements out about? And sometimes it's for the pettiest shit. And yet when it's outright racism, when it's outright, like, despicable things being said that are just hateful in the press, then suddenly the institution is silent.
The argument about the beard is one of the most
What? The argument about the beard? What? Oh my God. ITV, I need to know. What?
for a week and ended, he claims, with his brother ordering him, as the heir to the spare, to shave it off.
But what? I mean, I just read that. What is
Why?
that really about? Because that is not
think
about
it-
to
yeah.
beard or not
That's
to
bull-
beard.
Well, as again,
Trolling.
because I detail, I think it's a lot of it is to do with. I mean, I refer to it as heir spare, but also older brother, younger brother. Right? There's a level of competition there, and again, writing this, I remember that William had a beard himself, and that Granny and other people were the ones told him that he had to shave it off. The difference for me,
resentful. It's
if there
being
was a
resentful.
difference, but the difference for me was, as I explained to my grandmother, that this beard that I'm still wearing felt to me at the time like the new Harry, right? As almost like a shield to my anxiety. That was the time of my life when I
Everyone
grew
always
my
goes
beard.
through changes with their hair when they're
And
going
I
through
think
something.
William found
you
it
know,
hard that
I never
other people
thought it was
told
a
him to
point of
shave it off.
contention, though.
And yet here I was on my wedding day wearing military uniform, no longer in the military, but thinking believing as though I should shave it off before my wedding day. And I said, well, I don't believe that Meghan's going to recognize me if she comes up the aisle and sees me beardless. And I would feel very, very different without my beard. And that's hard for people to understand who have never grown a beard. But hopefully those beard people out there will go, yeah, no, I fully get that. I can understand.
Look, after the wedding, there's a kind of
I can
attempt at a
understand.
makeup
I
session
would
which you
never
describe
do
in
something
great
with
detail.
my hair or anything. I would never change my hair or do anything like that for somebody else.
involving
Hell no.
him, William, Kate, and Meghan. It seems to have gone so badly wrong that he describes Kate as gripping the edges of the leather chair so tightly that her fingers were white.
What?
Kate says she's owed an apology from Meghan, who previously put a moment of Kate's forgetfulness down to so-called baby brain.
Oh, this baby brain.
According to
Stop.
Harry,
I-
Kate tells Meghan they're not close enough to talk that way, and William says that's not what's done here in Britain.
Okay, can I speak as an American? This is some dumb shit. Get over it. We all have hormonal issues sometimes, and I don't think she meant it oh, you're crazy.
I think this is the point where a lot of people are going to go, okay, I get that there never was such a thing as a Fab Four. You know, things went
It was something that the British press created, which they could then dissect, or again, it creates competition as well, right?
Right.
The
Yeah,
idea of
they
the four of us being
created
together
it. Yeah.
was always a hope for me.
Yeah.
Before it was Meghan.
That's an interesting point that he makes as well. That they specifically
Whoever it was
created
gonna
that
be.
narrative to break it
I always
apart.
hoped that the four of us would get on.
They wanted
But
it to fail.
Very quickly, it became Meghan versus Kate, and that, when it plays out so publicly,
And it's misogyny, right?
you can't hide from that.
We're focused
Right?
so much
Especially
on
when within my family you have the news.
Oh God, I have to restart this anyway. But that is an interesting point, is that this whole story became sort of this sideshow of Meghan and Kate. And I think it just plays into this misogyny aspect of pitting women against each other and making it this cat fight, it's catty, drama or whatever. But really, this was more so the family, the men, the brothers that were going back and
Office.
forth.
Because the moment William married Kate, they went through a large portion of the same things that Meghan and I went through. But then I always believed
I covered that in my
well,
video,
I'm
didn't
the
I?
spare. I'm no competition to my father, I'm no competition to my brother. I think this will be absolutely fine. How wrong I was. The very thing that William and Kate had experienced from Pa and Camilla happened to us and happened from William and Kate's office as well. But somehow in that, apparently the same experience that they had had, William and Kate, wasn't happening to us.
Did your brother try to persuade you not to marry Meghan? He never did that.
It wasn't that he never
seemed
tried to
hesitant from
dissuade
what
me
they've
from
said.
marrying Meghan, but he aired some concerns very early on and said, this is going to be really hard for you. And I still to this day don't truly understand which part of what he was talking about. But maybe he predicted what the British press's reaction was going to be.
Well, it's easy to do that if you're in control of the press narrative, isn't it? Which, oh, well, that ended on like a real stinger there. But yeah, I think that's an interesting, there's a lot of things that he mentioned there that I think are really interesting points to bring up. One is definitely that there's the misogyny angle to it, that the focus became so much on the Kate versus Meghan, who wore it best, like all that sort of like fluff. But that's not the story. That's not the point of the story. Like, yes, they might have some sort of like interpersonal conflicts or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's not necessarily a cause for concern, right? To have, two people that have like a personality conflict, right? But the concern is when you have a dynamic like this that is in this family is set up with a hierarchy, right? It's the monarchy. You're from birth, you are basically being told that your future spouse, your future children, everything related to your life going forward is just like, not like, who cares? Like, you're not that important. You're not big in the grand scheme of things. Your story doesn't necessarily matter, right? What matters is protecting the institution and protecting the people that will be at the helm of that institution. And so when they took that media narrative and started twisting it against Harry and Meghan and starting to tear them down, drag them down, rope them into controversy, which was, again, orchestrated by their own family, it kind of makes it seem like they wanted to make it seem like it was petty stuff at first, specifically to make sure people weren't invested in actually seeing the truth of the matter, which is that this was a much bigger conflict than I think anyone was really imagining, because I don't think people could put themselves in those shoes, what it's like to go through your whole life having every aspect of what you do trying to be manipulated and controlled. To me, it's really interesting, right? That they went through the route of trying to pit Meghan and Kate first, and really tried to lay off of the brothers. And I think that goes down to like such a horrible, toxic thought that, like, again, these women that have been brought into the family are not like really part of the family, that they're really like pawns in this like much bigger game against like the men of the family. And isn't that pretty like terrifying that like they're basically just being used as like cannon fodder against each other, these two women, when in actuality the real conflict is between the three major men of the family, right? Charles, William, and Harry. And it's about why, can they all coexist and just be balanced? Right now, I think they all see it, especially Charles and William, see it as, we have to protect ourselves because we are like the most important. But just because you are going to be the king doesn't mean that like Harry and his life and stuff doesn't matter, right? That he shouldn't be, allowed to do what he wants, marry who he wants. And like, and if they shine while doing it and they get a lot of positive media attention, like, so be it.
It all happened so fast, so very fast.
Oh, we're getting into it.
He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and he knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back, the pieces cutting into me. I lay there for a moment, dazed, then got to my feet and told him to get out. Come on, hit me. You'll feel better if you hit me. Do what? Come on, we always used to fight. You'll feel better if you hit me. No. Only you'll feel better if I hit you. Please, just leave. He left the kitchen, but he didn't leave Not Cop. He was in the sitting room, I could tell. I stayed in the kitchen. 2 minutes passed, 2 long minutes. He came back looking regretful and apologized. He walked to the front door. This time I followed. Before leaving, he turned and called back.
Just because I've already heard this part, so my main point here is I want to be on the record on this. I do not like that the media has tried to portray this as like not abusive or
What
not
on earth was
horrid
that
or
all about?
just a scuffle between brothers and all that. That's nonsense.
Me and William, like I guess a lot of siblings, or maybe not, William and I used to fight all the time. Now the difference to that was we were kids.
Exactly.
We used to shoot each other with BB guns. We
There's
used to
a
have
big
firework
difference
fights.
between
All of this stuff that I talk about in the
children
book.
and 30-year-old grown men.
What was different here was this level of frustration. And I talk about the red mist that I had for so many years. And I saw this red mist in
I think red mist is an interesting way to put it. Like just being clouded by like your own anger and trauma and rage at life and the system and all that.
him. And
Sympathize.
I can pretty much guarantee today that if I wasn't doing therapy sessions like I was and being able to process that anger and frustration, that I would have fought back, 100%. But I didn't, because I was in a more comfortable place with my own anger. But he wanted me to hit him back, but I chose not to. But
it's
again,
pretty
so much of the
despicable
relationship between me and William and the way that it played
for
out
him to ask that
was because of
Harry.
the narrative, or the distorted narrative that was being pushed through the British press and some people within his office that were feeding him utter nonsense.
The description over many, many pages and chapters of your relationship with your brother ends in this extraordinary and
Oh, come on. An extraordinary what, Tom Brady? An extraordinary what?
heartbreaking scene on the day of your grandfather's funeral.
I pulled away, refused to meet his gaze. He forced me to look into his eyes. Listen to me, Harold. Listen. I love you, Harold. I want you to be happy. The words flew out of my mouth. I love you too, but your stubbornness is
I'm kind of glad this is a new excerpt
Extraordinary.
as well.
and yours isn't.
I'm glad they
I
both
pulled away
kind
again.
of acknowledge that they
He grabbed
still
me
love each
again,
other.
twisting me to maintain eye contact. Harold, you must listen to me. I just want you to be happy, Harold. I swear. I swear on Mummy's life. He stopped. I stopped. Pa stopped. He'd gone there. He'd used the secret code, the universal password. Ever since we were boys, those 3 words were to be used only in times of extreme crisis. On Mummy's life. For nearly 25 years, we'd reserved that soul-crushing vow for times when one of us needed to be heard, to be believed quickly, for times when nothing else would do. It stopped me cold, as it was meant to. Not because he'd used it, but because it didn't work. I simply didn't believe him.
Just reading it,
That's an interesting.
like everyone's going to think, I think, who reads that, whatever attitude they come to this story with, and just find that heartbreaking.
It's
heartbreaking.
It is
I agree.
heartbreaking. This whole thing is completely, not just unnecessary, it's incredibly sad.
I think it's so
But
strange that
there's
William
a way through
can't
it. There's a way out of it.
understand
And that's what I'm focused on now.
where he's coming
But yes, it's heartbreaking.
What would you say to William if he's watching this?
What would I say to him if I'm watching
Well,
this?
what do you think
I'm not going to
he's
share.
thinking?
I'm not going to share
not
what
a
I say.
personal thing. Let me ask a different question. What do you think William will be thinking if he watches this, or if he reads your book?
I don't think.
Huh.
I don't
That's
think
an interesting question.
my
I think
father
he
or
would
brother will
probably
read
be
the book.
pissed.
I really hope they do, but I don't think they will.
I think they'll be
And
sad,
with regard
but
to this
also
interview,
they
I,
just are
you know,
full
I
of
don't know whether they'll be,
I don't think that they
watching
will
this
get
or not.
through to
But
them.
what they have to say to me and what I have to say to them will be in private, and I hope it can stay that way. because the last moment that we were together was during, the Queen's funeral. And that, in my mind, and I think globally people felt the same, was a really good opportunity to bring the family together.
Yeah. And they just didn't.
The day that she
Powered
died
through.
was just a really, really horrible reaction from my family members. And then, by all accounts, certainly from what I saw and what other people probably experienced, was they were on the back foot, and then the briefings and the leaking and the planting. I was like, we're here to celebrate the life of Granny and to mourn her loss. Can we come together as a family? But I don't know how we collectively, how we change that.
You say you hope
They just
discussions
are
will be
stuck
private.
in
You've
this
just
cycle,
put
this
enormous
loop.
amounts of private conversations in the public domain. I mean, wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things, but, for the last however many years, let's just focus on the last 6 years, the level of planting and leaking.
Yeah, it's gotten ridiculous. Just and especially just like the amount of sort of online hate.
For myself, to the point of where I had to leave my country.
Now I
the
can
distorted
watch this
narrative is
start.
that
Thanks,
we wanted to
ITV.
leave to go and, make money. We were dedicated to a life of service, as is proven by everything that we're doing now with the work that we do. And the proposal was very much on the table publicly, which is we can't cope in this situation and we're going to put our mental health first. We've asked for help and support. At that time, I didn't fully understand how much or how complicit the family were in that pain and suffering that was happening to my wife. And the one
That's an interesting comment that he says he didn't understand how complicit they were, which is I think maybe that's something like as you grow up and you slowly start to have your own sort of press and your own sort of like press media narratives, that you become more and more aware of the leaking and planting coming from that, or they specifically were ramping those things up because of Meghan, which I'm not sure how to interpret that comment, but it's interesting that he says he didn't realize how much that was happening.
briefing the press solidly for well over a decade. So I'm sorry that me owning my story and being able to tell my own story is upsetting to some people. But I have to rely on the truth. And I have done everything humanly possible in private for it not to get to this stage. But now I get to tell my story. And as I said, Tom, none of this is intentionally to harm anyone in my family. But I certainly feel as though that we never needed to be here.
But the portrait of your brother is harmful to him. I mean, people may choose not to accept it or whatever, but it is harmful to him. And if he was sitting in the room, I think he would say, look, you know, the reason that we had that argument in the cottage was about kind of issues with staffing, and I'm not going to go into that because you talk about it in the book, and people can make their own judgments. But he felt that there was an issue. I think he would say he found you emotional, defensive. He couldn't get.
Okay, well, so just really quickly, I just want to make clear, just because, yes, that might be true, but that doesn't mean that Harry needs to be in a position to keep silent about this abuse, right? Even if this was a one-off, even if this was, this was about something different or whatever excuses there is, there are things that Harry is sharing that are abusive, and he's not required to be silent about the abuse that he's received from William or from the press or any of that, or the trauma that he's gone through. He's not required to stay silent on that. And yes, it's harmful to Prince William, but Prince William shouldn't have done it. He's an adult. He's responsible for his actions. And he's decided to choose violence. That's not Prince Harry's fault. So, I mean, yeah, I don't like that narrative saying that he was required to hold this inside, or he shouldn't have said this because it makes William look bad. He shouldn't have done it. It's simple. If you don't want people to know that you're a shitty person.
Right that wrong. I wanted to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And that has taken a lot of hard work because I couldn't understand why am I being called a racist. Of course, clearly by what I did, it looked that way, but I knew that I wasn't a racist. But I made an active choice to ensure that the British press and the public knew that I wasn't, because that was a horrible place to be, a horrible thing to be called.
point.
But there was a level of unconscious bias that existed within me that needed to be confronted.
Do you still think there
Amen.
is any
I
realistic
agree.
chance of a reconciliation that you have so clearly articulated that you want?
100%. I genuinely believe that. And I hope that when it gets to that stage, when there can be a constructive conversation,
I think it will
that
be
again,
a long,
I've tried,
long time
I've
from now.
spent a lot of money
it
through
does
legal
happen.
trying to find some form of reconciliation. And it almost
In all honesty, I don't think reconciliation is going to happen until the institution is like either like massively scaled back or completely dissolved. Like abolish the monarchy, and hopefully this family can get their life together again.
will have a ripple effect across the entire world. Maybe that's lofty, maybe that's naive, whatever. But I genuinely feel that. And knowing the monarchy as I know it from something that I was brought up in, for me, it's always been about uniting people. And it breaks my
theory.
heart that the British tabloid press have so successfully, managed to create this divide and
like,
this
I wanna
conflict
wanna
at the
jump
same
in.
time as a culture war in the UK. So you talk about peace. Peace can happen when there's truth. And between my family and myself,
Snaps for
it is up
you.
to us to reconcile. But the only way that can happen is by keeping the antagonist out of it.
Just finally on the question of brother, this is a sort of Shakespearean tale. It is...
You've probably read more Shakespeare than I have.
Well, possibly, but, you know, it's very well... It is, and I guess listening to you now, the danger is that, I mean, what, you know, one might say, look, you haven't so much burnt your bridges as taken a flamethrower to them by being this honest in the book. They might say to you is, look, you've just destroyed any chance of a
But it's
reconciliation.
not okay. It's not burning bridges to acknowledge pain and hurt, right? It's not a burning of a bridge, right? A burning of a bridge is you actively smear somebody else, you actively say, you know, shit that's not true, or you say, you just start spreading like anger and hate about someone and you burn that bridge. That's burning a bridge. But just being honest about your life, being honest about how people have treated you, that's not burning a bridge. And there's no way that this family is going to like be united again if they're just going to like sweep everything under the rug. Like that's not how you heal from trauma and abuse. Like, I don't like this narrative that he's burning bridges. He's airing his dirty laundry. He shouldn't be talking about X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't think that that's a constructive way to think about it. Oh my God. I just, again, this is Harry trying to talk about why it's bad to live in a system that thinks this way, that thinks that certain people are better than others, that certain people are destined for certain positions and certain roles, right? He's taking a human element to why monarchy is bad, right? He's saying monarchy is not just bad because, you know, it's not democratic, right? It's not a good system of governance. He's saying this is a bad system because it is an abusive and toxic system. And why should we have a system in which certain children just grow up to be the spare and are treated like they are disposable, like they can just be, you know, the punching bag of the media and be the scapegoat of the family, while the more senior members benefit from a a more positive image, I guess. Although I don't think they have a very positive image. I think they just have a stronghold on the press to make sure that they don't have a negative image. But again, I don't think that it's not a system, right, that I at the end of the day that I would walk away from this and be like, yes, I want to subject more children to this upbringing. I want more children to grow up just like fundamentally unable to like talk about their abuse and how they've been treated. It's not a good look, I don't think. And it's curious to me because I don't know if he's gotten into this in this interview, but I know that there have been some clips from other interviews where somebody actually asked him if he still supports the monarchy, and he said yes. And again, he's got a whole bunch more to go on his journey, you know, but I would be surprised if he continues to support the monarchy, because I think his whole story shows why this system is not good
How
on a
lost we
human
are,
level.
I thought. How far we've strayed. How much damage has been done to our love, our bond, and why? All because a dreadful mob of dweebs and crones and cut-rate criminals and clinically diagnosable sadists along Fleet Street feel the need to get their jollies and plump their profits and work out their personal issues by tormenting one very large, very ancient, very dysfunctional family.
True that.
Let's tackle the press. I just want to concede a couple of things so we don't have to talk about them, because it's very clear in the book. Paparazzi, horrific around your mother, still very horrible today.
Yeah.
Totally get that. I think everyone watching this will get that. Press doesn't always tell the truth about you, putting that mildly, and you're quite funny about that in the books. There's relationships to you. There's your relationship with Cameron Diaz, who you never met, and you know there's some lighter moments in the discussion of the press. So totally get that.
Yeah.
And were there negative stories written up about you and your wife during that period? Obviously they weren't. They're there. You can see them. So let's just concede all that.
There's nothing wrong about writing
all the
negative
rest of it.
stories.
But
That's good of you to concede.
well, no, I'm just saying
But
those
the
are kind of
volume
unarguable sort of, you know,
is definitely
starting
the
points,
issue.
right?
But some people still argue against that.
Right, okay. But
so-
that kind of seems obvious. I wanted to talk to you about, it's quite often in therapy, people start with a baseline, which is the Serenity Prayer, which I know you know well. I'm not going to turn this into a therapy session, don't worry. But the Serenity Prayer is, we can, you know, oh God, give me the serenity to accept what I can't change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So one thing I might say to you is that there is a big, big, big difference between you and your family that I get.
Mm-hmm.
They're on option one, can't change the press, just accept it. You're on option two, must do something about the press. If I don't stand up to what I consider these abuses, no one else will. But their approach, which is to sort of say, in a free country, you've got to have a free press. People in power, you,
How
your
is it a
family have got
free
to be
press
scrutinised. Someone's got to
if
do
the
it.
royal
We just got to rub
family
along with
has
them. That's
the
not wrong,
ability
is it?
to
That's not a
manipulate
crime.
that
That
press?
attitude.
No, the scrutiny,
Like-
100%. The
But
press.
the accepting of, you know, just you can't control it. That's what
It's
I
not
mean.
a free
Well, my family
press.
tried to
That's
control
the
it for
thing
years.
is, like, people
and
have
they still try to control it because of their
somehow
relationship
manipulated
with the
themselves
British
into
press.
thinking that the press
But isn't
is
that
free
built in
when
a basic-
It's something they don't want to change
it's
because it
controlled
benefits
and
them.
manipulated by
right?
the
It doesn't
people
always
in power.
benefit
No,
them.
it doesn't
As
always-
you've
of
said,
course-
sometimes
Of course
it's-
it doesn't, yeah.
But your dad's attitude, for example, is, you know, he says in the book, darling boy, you can't deal with it. You know, don't read it if you don't. And it passes. It does pass.
It passes. I mean, yes, but it's also all of those things change how people perceive you, right? Like if the only things that people ever knew about me were they were just hearing constantly about all my negative qualities and all of my flaws, that changes how they go into reading the next article about me.
The
You know?
mission of changing the media landscape within the UK from being personal to my life's work, a large part of that is down to the ongoing legal battles, right? Specifically with phone hacking, that I put in my claims over 3 years ago. and I'm still waiting. So one might assume that a lot of this, from their perspective, is retaliation and trying to intimidate me to settle rather than take it to court and potentially they have to shut down. But that is a large part of it.
Can you explain that? Because lots of people watching this program won't have the faintest idea what you're talking about. Phone hacking happened a decade ago, gone, forgotten. And who have you got court cases against? And why is...
You probably know more than I do, don't you?
Well, it's a news story.
I briefly mentioned the phone hacking in my first video. I don't know too much about the News of the World phone hacking scandal. I know that all three of like the younger royals had their phones hacked.
I would say certainly, like the Mail, you're suggesting, you know, they hired private investigators to break into people's houses to plant listening devices. I mean, this is off the scale. They deny absolutely. Let's be clear, you would owe them a pretty abject apology if you're not right, if it's not proven.
Well, if it wasn't wrong, they would presumably sue us.
Well, but these are grave allegations, and this is raising the stakes to extremely high levels.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, putting those claims in was an acceptance of the repercussions. But what is more worrying is that those repercussions are so obvious, I guess, across the British press that there's no one else. If they want to hold us and the rich and powerful to account, and they want to police society, then who's policing them? That's something that William and I have talked about for many, many years. Who is policing them? And I think, again, what's happened to my wife and what's happened to us happens to so many people on a daily basis because of the British press, because of the racism, because of the cronyism, because of the lies. So, you know, my father said to me that it was probably a suicide mission to try and change the press. But, you know, having spent 10 years in the army, I learned a specific set of values. And if I see wrongdoing, I will be lured towards trying to resolve it, especially.
And also there is a really big difference between accepting that there will be negative press about you and having to lie down and take it, right? Like, if there are things that are false, if there are things that are wrong or racist or whatever, you should be allowed to publicly condemn that, right? This is untrue. This is wrong. This is harassing me, right? And he has done that sort of thing when he was in the royal family, but that's always downplayed. That's always diminished. And it's so strange because it's diminished by Charles and William, who have more control over the narrative. They are specifically telling journalists not to go after them and instead to go after Harry. And then he's being told that he has to take it and that he can't respond to any negativity about him.
Make a difference. And it may be incredibly hard, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but it is 100% worth it. Because again, it goes back to what I've said before, which is I'm happy with them talking crap about me every single day because I know it's not true. What I draw the line at is when you're inciting hatred towards myself and or my wife and my children.
But the trouble is, you're probably the most famous person on the planet right now. Like, if it's not a horrible article in a newspaper, it's going to be out there on Twitter. So what your family might say to you is that you just can't, you got to let it go. You can't fight it all. And I understand your narrative is, if I don't stand up to what I don't believe. But isn't there a danger that, given your background and trauma,
there's also a big difference as well when on Twitter, like, for example, there's a difference between someone that doesn't like you and a hate account, right? Like, we have to hold like social media platforms to account as well. They can't have people that specifically exist on there to be a hate bot, to be a hate like inciter, right? To toe the line, right, into dangerous territory and just spread hate and misinformation and disinformation because again, like Russian bots, guys, like it's an easy way for people to manipulate your political system, right? And if people aren't watching that and controlling that, right, then you have a monarchy. Why? Because there's a bunch of hate accounts on Twitter. Like,
when we're talking about accountability, you know, just recently, which I know you know about, you know, the Jeremy Clarkson article. So not only did what he said was horrific and is hurtful and cruel towards my wife, but it also encourages other people around the UK and around the world, men
Exactly.
particularly, to go and think that it's acceptable to treat women that way. And to use my stepmother's words recently as well, there is a global pandemic of violence against women. It's no longer a case of me asking for accountability, but at this point, the world is asking for accountability. And the world is asking
100%.
for some form of comment from the monarchy. But the silence is deafening, to put it mildly. So I think we've gone from this being like, just my personal, whatever you want to call it, to way, way, way bigger than us. And
Yes.
from what I have learned
I
and
100%
believe with the
agree
monarchy,
with
if
that.
someone in this country, especially in the US, no names mentioned, tweets or says certain things that are just categorically harmful and dangerous, you have the president and the vice president speak out against it. But
True.
everything to do with my wife
True.
after 6 years, they haven't said a single thing, but they're willing to defend themselves.
And you know what? That is an excellent point. That is a point that I didn't actually consider, is not only is the monarchy being silent, but your monarchy is part of your political system. And your government is being silent. The Conservative Party has been silent on this issue, right? They've allowed this sort of thing to continue with no comment, right? If there was a big incident of racism, racial hatred or whatever, or some sort of like negative like article like this, for sure the president or the vice president would comment on something like that. And yet, where is the comment from the PM? Rishi Sunak, defending POC. Where is he? I said that as a joke. I don't
People are
expect
starting
anything
to
from
understand
Rishi
now
Sunak.
is that a royal source is not an unknown person. It is the palace specifically briefing the press, but covering their tracks by being unnamed. And I think that's pretty shocking to people, especially when you realize how many palace sources, palace insiders, senior palace officials, how many quotes have been attributed to those people. Some of the most heinous, horrible things have been said about me and my wife, completely condoned by the palace because it's coming from the palace. And those journalists have literally been spoon-fed that narrative without ever coming to us, without ever seeing or questioning the other side. I strongly believe that the way that the British press is showing itself at the moment is incredibly damaging to the UK.
Exactly. I 100% agree. It is, from an American perspective, it's pretty wild to see the way that the British media is so constricting. I think that I don't know what it is, but like I feel like the American media landscape is just so much broader and so much wider than you would typically sort of think of. In the UK, you have just like especially in the Royal Rota, you only have like a very specific amount of journalists or media that has that kind of like access, and they all are perpetuating the same narrative. We don't necessarily have that kind of system in the US. Like I would never say, like, for example, like the White House press office is going to like say the same narrative across all the different platforms of people that are within like the White House press corps or whatever, right? Whereas in the Royal Rota, they are all saying the same messages and all saying the same spin with no sort of counter narrative and no other like media that's like big enough to really like flip that, other than maybe The Guardian, who seems to be like the rising star in the sort of like changing the narrative against Harry and Meghan, at least from what I've seen online. But everywhere else, it just seems to be the same things over and over again. And yeah, from an American perspective, that is just not how the media over here works. Like, what? confusing to me. Unhinged. It's unhinged behavior, really. Like, I can't imagine being in a situation in which there is no other sort of like media out there to like just present like some other perspective, right? Not just like my own perspective, but just like something else. Everything, they just latch on to these very specific things that are fed to them by the palace. This is what you can talk about. This is what you can't talk about. And there's just no balance to that at all. As an American, I just can't imagine being in a media landscape like that. Just being trapped in the echo chamber. And I don't know why, like I said earlier, like I don't know why the monarchy is so gung-ho on this particular system, other than I guess Charles and William have kind of mastered this system and they don't want to like relinquish that control. But wouldn't this just be like so much nicer if they could like free themselves from the sort of like paparazzi tabloidy kind of stuff and could instead just like have an IG account and like post pictures that they want and like, you know, not have to be like hounded all the time. Like if they did that, right, and just transitioned to like having their own control over their own narratives and not having to like have this push and pull with the press, wouldn't that just make their lives so much better? Like, I just don't understand. They have Twitter, they have IG accounts. Why not use them and try to cut off this sort of like toxic cycle with the press where you feel like you have to brief against members of your own family in order to like stay on top? Why not just curate your own image, right? Like, and especially like for imagine as well for like a William and Kate as well, like they're just not very sparkly personalities, okay? Like they just don't come off in public situations. They just don't come off with the same sort of like fun bubbliness as a Harry and Meghan, okay? No shame to them, but that's just true, right? Imagine if they like, instead of just being hateful and like briefing against their own family, what if they just like curated their IG account and like, you know, tried to like make themselves seem more personable on their socials and tried to change the media to their favor by curating their story that way? To me, I can't understand why they want to go this route.
That hasn't happened. Everything they said was going to happen hasn't happened. I've always been open to wanting to help them understand their part in it. And especially when you are the monarchy, you have a responsibility, and quite rightly, people hold you to a higher standard than others. Certainly the media should, right? So the way that I've learnt it through my own experience and for what I've seen and what I've heard, yes, you're right, the key word is concern, which was troubling. But you speak to any other couple, mixed race couple around the world, and you will probably find that the white side of the family have either openly discussed it or secretly discussed, you know, what are the kids going to look like? And that is part of a, you know, bigger conversation that needs to be had. But to say that that doesn't happen around the rest of the world, but it just happened there, that's not true. But again, for me, the difference is unconscious bias and racism. But if you are called out for unconscious bias, you need to make that right. And you have the opportunity and the choice to, but if you choose not to, then that rapidly becomes racist. Something much more serious.
Yeah, it means that you're actively choosing to perpetuate racism.
My problem has never been with the monarchy, nor the concept of monarchy. It's been with the press and the sick relationship that's evolved between it and the palace. I love my mother country, and I love my family, and I always will. I just wish, at the second darkest moment of my life, they'd both been there for me. And I believe they'll look back one day and wish they had too.
Do you still believe in the monarchy?
Yes, I talk about it in the book.
Oh,
Do you believe
yes.
you'll play a part in its future?
I don't know.
See,
I really don't know.
Harry,
hope so?
I think Harry
Well,
needs
it's
to like
not
do a
about
little bit more
hoping so.
reflecting on the monarchy
Going back
because
to the initial
none of his
proposal
story is
was we always wanted to
pro-monarchy.
continue to serve. We just
In my
didn't want
view.
to be based and living in the UK all the time. One of the main reasons for that was to remove ourselves from this competition that was happening for the front pages. So, if my father asks us for support across the Commonwealth, then that is certainly an open discussion. But I'm here now, Tom.
Yeah.
Right? My family's now here. We're doing the same thing, the same job over there. No taxpayer funding, right? It's not the way that I wanted it to happen, but I have now created a life for my family where I feel safer, right? So who knows what's going to happen?
If you're invited to the
And I
coronation,
mentioned
will you come?
safety and stuff.
There's a lot that can happen between now and then. But, the door is always open. The ball is in their court. There's a lot to be discussed, and I really hope that they are willing to sit down and talk about it, because there's a lot that's happened in 6 years, and prior to that as well.
There are a lot of people in Britain who support you. There are a lot of people in Britain who are annoyed with you and wish you'd shut up and stop talking about it and leave it at
Stop talking about what?
Stop
the
talking
issues
about
that you've raised during the
abuse.
course of this interview.
Why?
Not talk about your family, not talk about the press, not talk about all these things. And I think there are some
again,
people in the middle who are listening, but
look
kind of
inside
think
yourself if you're
he does
saying
seem
those
to spend a
kind of
lot of time
things.
looking back, not looking forward. You're like, fine, you wanted to leave the
inside
family,
yourself.
start a new life. That's
Yeah.
great. Good for you. But is there a danger that you're looking back too much? Do you think? Do you worry about that for yourself?
We always knew that these two projects, both the Netflix documentary and the book, one being our story and one very much being my story, they were look-back projects, right? They were necessary, they were essential for historical fact and significance. I don't want my kids or other people at that age growing up thinking, oh, wow, this is what happened. It's like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened, right? There were two sides to every story. So,
I think that's fair.
It's been a
right?
painful process.
Especially
Cathartic
when you're in
at
the
times,
monarchy, it's like
but going
your
back over
story is
old
going
ground
to
to
be
be able
in
to
history.
get these projects right has taken a lot of energy. And there's a lot of relief now that both these projects have been complete, and now we can focus on looking forward. And I'm excited about that. So no, I'm not stuck in the past, and I will never be stuck in the past. I've made peace with a lot of what's happened, but I am still, I guess, patiently waiting for accountability, not necessarily just for us, but because of the significance that I know that will have to so many other people.
If there is a process, I mean, do you acknowledge you got things wrong?
I'm sure we got things wrong.
Yeah,
But I've
all
continued
people are
over
flawed
the last
human beings,
3-4
but not
years
all
to
people are
ask,
abusive,
to tell
right?
me what we got wrong so that we can address it and apologize for those things. But every single time I've asked, I've received nothing in response.
But where are you now? I think that's one question people have at the end of all this. Are you happy?
Yes, I'm very,
Yeah,
very happy.
I would say he
I'm very
definitely
at
comes
peace.
across happy.
I am in a better place than I've ever been. And I think that probably angers some people, infuriates others,
agree.
because just by the nature of
jealousy.
me leaving, I'm sure
It's nastiness.
some people always thought that Meghan would leave, right? But I don't think they ever thought that I would leave as well. But just by leaving,
That's a good point.
it's embarrassing for some people.
They wanted to bully her out, but
as
I
I
don't
said,
think
it
they
wasn't
necessarily thought that he would
something
be
that
a
I would have
decent
necessarily
human
chosen at the
being
time,
and
but
stick by his wife.
I own my story, and I own the results. But I've got 2 beautiful kids and an amazing wife. Like, the happiness in my family now, I have never felt anywhere else before.
One final thing, Ben,
point.
just picking up on that.
Yeah.
Is happiness and peace your nuclear family? Is it being out of it? Is it being far away physically from the things that aggravate you, like the press? What is...
The safety
What-
the safety of my family is my priority.
Right.
Yes.
And that is the main reason that we left. Unfortunately, the circumstances back there hasn't changed. In fact, it's only got worse. I feel safe here. My family feels safe here. I'm happy. My family's happy.
Well, and it's also
It's
not
difficult
having to live in a
going back.
controlling environment, being
But
suffocated
I'm
by
in
your
such a
choices,
good
being told
headspace
how
now.
you need to live your life. Like, I think that's pretty obvious. I think that that's pretty obvious. Like, that's a much healthier life to live, where you're free to just go out, go in the backyard and play around with your kids, and not a life in which you,
Painful to say the least.
you know,
What I
are
would
told
say about
exactly
is,
when
you
and
know,
where to,
whatever people
to go.
say, I don't think anyone's going to read it and not fly through it. So thank you for sparing the time. Pleasure to see you as always.
Thanks for coming all this way. Hopefully you can do it.
Well, that was really interesting. That was a lot, actually.
And Prince Harry's US interview with Anderson Cooper will be available to watch exclusively on ITVX from tomorrow afternoon. Coming soon to ITV1 and telling the story of three doctors.
But okay, geez, that was actually quite a lot more than I was expecting to get out of it. I'm actually considering going back to the beginning and watching the part that I missed as well while we're waiting for the Anderson Cooper interview tonight. But I would say I was surprised at how much more they sort of gave into like the sneak peeks of the book. I wasn't expecting them to be reading more excerpts, I guess, about that. I think that a lot of what he said, it's not surprising to me as someone that's been like really following this story really in depth. I do like that he really emphasized that the sort of like controlling aspect, and how this is like much more freeing, and although he didn't necessarily want it to happen this way, that this ended up ultimately being better for him mentally and emotionally. And I think that's one part of the story, again, that just like completely gets lost out of all of this in the media, is like, well, are they happy? Like, are the royal family members happy? And nobody seems to, and I think it goes back to, again, because Tom Bradbury is the one, Tom Bradbury, is that his name? Brady, Tom Brady, whatever his name is. He was the one that asked Meghan in the South Africa interview, "Are you okay?" And again, it's like so interesting. Like, we never actually have that conversation. Like, are these people all right? Are they okay? And I think a lot of people are just like, well, I don't care. But it's like, these are human beings at the end of the day. These are human beings that you have put in this position in your political system. You should care about how they are and if they are actually fulfilled in this role. And if they're not, then things need to change. So I'm glad that he focused on that part. I'm glad that he's sharing his story. I'm sure that there's a lot more interesting things that are going to come up in the book, which is why I'm like super excited to read it. But overall, I think that we've gotten even more interesting bits than I was expecting. I'm genuinely curious if there's going to be a lot of repeat stuff going on with the rest of the interviews. Anderson Cooper's interview is on tonight. I'm hoping to be streaming that as well. I think it starts at 7:30. So I'm gonna be back on for that. But I'm gonna take a break for now. But overall, fascinating stuff. And hopefully, I'm hoping that this sort of like press circuit starts to like open people up, because I think right now, the last couple of weeks, it's been really intensely just like all the like royal family like drama channels and like people on Twitter and stuff that have like been super focused on this story, which I don't understand. I think it's kind of misogynistic, because I think that the whole like royal family has become like, oh, that's like a woman's thing to talk about. They talk about it on like the breakfast shows and like Loose Women and stuff. And it becomes like, it's sort of like celebrity gossip, but it's like, do you guys forget, like, these people are in your political system. You pay them taxpayer money. Like, this is politics. This isn't just like some ladies gossiping. Like, this is your political system, and your political system is basically encouraging child abuse. So maybe we should like wake up and like try to fix that instead of you know, just saying like, oh, that's like just drama, that's just gossip. But anyway, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna end the stream here, and I'll hopefully come back for Anderson Cooper later tonight. So see you guys.